highs and lows of the day. Not just at school, but in your personal life. Because you knew she had time to listen, and she would make you feel better when you left. Again, she always saw our potential, and knew that she had the ability to help us realize that potential and touch our dreams. Maybe she had that special magnetic attraction for all of us because she was so content with life. So authentic. She was exactly who she held herself out to be. She was exactly the person she presented to each of us. She was confident, intelligent, loving, kind, intelligent, and beautiful. And I wonder where she found that authenticity. I didn't have to think very hard, because imagine finding the love of your life at a blind date. Shortly after graduating as valedictorian of Española High. Sometimes we each hear the expression, the love of his life, the love of her life. It becomes trite, sometimes empty. But the words, the love of his life and the love of her life, have incredible magnitude when you think of Mr. and Mrs. Perea. Even when I was 15 years old, I can remember how Mrs. Perea's eyes lit up when she talked about her Mr. Perea. They had been married for 30 plus years at the time, and she was still like that college girl who'd captured the big man on campus at the University of New Mexico. She was in love, and it was true. It was right out of the movies, a blind date, homecoming, the University of New Mexico. Amazing. It adds a brand new meaning to Go Lobos. Huh? I remember hoping that I'd find the same thing. And thankfully I have. The love of my life is with me here today, and she's been by my side for 20 years. Mrs. Perea and Mr. Perea will always be my gold standard for marital bliss. Shortly after Aleli and I were married, I remember taking Rafael and her down here to Belen, over to the house. Mr. Perea was dutifully doing stuff in the yard. He was mowing, he was cutting the weeds and sweating like he was a teenager on a job site. And Mrs. Perea, she was the hostess with the mostess. She made my wife and son feel so welcome in that home. We will never forget it. I told her as newlyweds we'd hoped we could enjoy the same love that she and her husband shared. She assured us we would and promised to keep us in her prayers. We knew that she meant it when she said that, because if Mrs. Perea was anything, she was prayerful. She was a woman who had a deep faith in God, and it shined every day. It's hard to believe that Manuel and Flora spent 60 years in love. But I remember like it was just yesterday that Senator Padilla and I stood in awe at the 50th wedding anniversary celebration. Remember the country club? They were still just like two teenagers madly in love. Bailando y todo. Right? It was beautiful. And Senator Padilla and I were just so inspired. They were still college sweethearts 50 years later. Mr. Perea with his beloved Fefa. I remember in high school she said, Brian, she said, I just got a phone call from my husband. And you know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to tell you something I don't tell anybody else. And probably he'd be mad if I told you. But I'm going to tell you anyway. He calls me a little something special when he talks to me. He calls me Fefa. I'm kidding, Fefa. I felt so special. I knew the secret. I knew their secret language of love. I keep waiting for Alele to find a word for me, but none of them are as sweet as Fefa. She's got a lot of names for me, but none of them are as sweet as Fefa. Mrs. Perea had a love for learning. Even 15 or 20 years after she retired and impacting thousands of students in Valencia County, she was still a learner. She was always curious and wanted to know what the latest news was in education, world events, what was going on. And I'll tell you what, I'll put her Facebook skills up against any teenager I know. Huh? She was the best. She was a master Facebooker. She had a PhD in Facebooking, right? How many friends do we have in Facebook for Flora Perea? Huh? Raise your hand, look at that, 2/3 of us. And if you're not a friend of Flora's, that's because you're not on Facebook. So you got to get on the Facebook. It was kind of funny, the family prepared a few thoughts about their beloved mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. And one of the thoughts they shared, I have to tell you, Flora had a great sense of humor. For example, when she was in the hospital, her children were talking to her and told her that Facebook had an enormous amount of posts about her being ill. She replied with that signature grin and probably tilted her head just a little bit. She said, quote, "It will probably go viral." Her children remained serious and agreed, "Yes, Mom, it will go viral." And then she didn't stop there. She said, "By tomorrow, it'll be on CNN and the AP will write a story about it." It was impossible at that point for her children not to smile.
Yeah.
She was truly, truly amazing. I've reflected over the past several days about sharing some thoughts with you this morning. And I realized that there was nothing more to highlight that could be even close to as important as highlighting the love she had for her family. Even as I sat beside her in the hospital bed and gave her the rosary that I brought back from Israel, when she took to that last CAT scan, she still was beaming about her family. Her kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids and the great-great-grandkids who were going to come along the way. She was so proud. There was so much love. And all she could be concerned about was, I wonder if Manuel's eating enough. I wonder who's going to take care of Manuel. The love of her life. That's up to each of us now. We got to check in. We got to give him that support. After 60 years, it's a big change. This little girl from Española, she enriched New Mexico by raising beautiful children who had beautiful children of their own, etc., etc. She inspired young students, so many here today, to reach for the stars. To reach for the stars, especially her favorite and superstar student, Senator Michael Padilla. She always adored Michael. She took so much pride in his success. But that was Mrs. Perea. You know the saying, you'll never remember what somebody said, but you'll always remember how they made you feel. Mrs. Perea always made us feel like we were the most important person on earth. And that she loved us deeply. And no one did she love more than Senator Padilla. And I know because she told me. Well, this morning, Rio Riva County is shining just a little brighter as it takes pride in its beautiful valedictorian from Española, Mrs. Perea. Valencia County is a whole lot smarter because of all the students who were educated by Mrs. Perea. The world, it's a better place because of the love that was shared by our Mrs. Perea. She loved each and every person she met, especially those of you here today. That's our Mrs. Perea. Let us all honor her by being the loving, caring, and wonderful people she always saw us to be. To realize the potential we have and carry on her legacy by finding that same limitless potential in each person we meet. Let us not see each other for the people we are today, but for the capacity and potential we have to be the people of tomorrow. I love you, Mrs. Perea, and I know you have a corner lot in heaven, because I know God wants you close, because you kept him close in your heart.